Welcome back to the horror story channel Bong Toi Trong Dem. Today, the channel is excited to introduce the ghost story titled The Ghost of the Tea Hill. Before we begin, if you find this story engaging, please give it a like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for listening. Now, let's get started. Morning in the Tea Hill countryside is always fresh and filled with a gentle fragrance. Endless rows of green tea stretch far into the horizon, glistening under the early sunlight, swaying like a vast green carpet in the breeze. The people here have lived off tea farming for generations, long before electricity ever reached this land. In an old wooden house halfway up the hill, Hung's family is gathered together. Hung, a man in his 30s, simple and strong, has devoted his entire life to the tea fields. His love for the work is so deep that his calloused hands and nails always carry the faint bitter scent of young tea leaves. Lan, Hung's mother, is a stern woman accustomed to old traditions. She raised her son alone after her husband passed away early, while also maintaining a vast tea plantation. To her, the tea fields are not just a livelihood, but also blood, sweat, and ancestral heritage. For this reason, she is very strict with Mai, her daughter-in-law, both in tending the garden and raising little T. Her 7-year-old grandson, Mai, on the other hand, came from the town. She was free-spirited and unaccustomed to the hardships of rural life. At first, she tried to adapt after marriage, but gradually, the differences became too clear, and conflicts between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law grew sharper. While Hung spent all year buried in the tea fields, Mai often felt abandoned, lost in the earthy atmosphere and under Lan's constant watch. One morning, the family meal was tense. Lan glanced at her grandson's bowl of rice and shook her head. "Daughter-in-law, why is today's soup so greasy? That's not good for children." Mai pursed her lips and put down her chopsticks. "Mother, tea likes it this way. Besides, I was in a bit of a hurry today." "Hurry?" Lan snapped. "You stay home all day. And you can't even cook properly?" Little T sat quietly, his round eyes turning toward his father as if seeking rescue. Hung sighed, wanting to ease the tension, but he remained silent. He knew both his mother and his wife were stubborn, and stepping in would only make things worse. Frustrated, Mai left the table and went to her room. The suffocating silence filled the entire house. By the afternoon, while Hung was still busy in the tea fields, Mai took the chance to go to the town market. There, she ran into Fong, a man her age and an old school friend. Fong worked as a tea trader, cheerful and smooth-spoken, reuniting after a long time. Their conversation flowed easily. Fong skillfully complimented Mai, saying she was too young and beautiful for such a harsh rural life. His words slipped into her heart like an unfamiliar breeze. She felt noticed, heard, something Hung had stopped giving her long ago. From then on, their meetings became more frequent. At first, just small talk at the tea stall, but soon they turned into secret rendezvous behind the market. Mai was torn between fear and temptation. Deep down, guilt gnawed at her, yet she lacked the strength to stop. One afternoon, Lan happened to pass by the market and suddenly caught sight of Mai and Fong standing tucked away in a corner. Laughing softly together, the old woman's eyes darkened instantly. Returning home, she said nothing, but from that day on her attitude grew harsher. Her gaze sharp as a blade every time Mai walked past. Mai noticed the change, her heart tightening with both fear and resentment. In her mind, dark thoughts began to stir. That night, little T woke up screaming. Hung rushed to hold him, asking again and again until he finally made out a few broken words. "I saw Grandma. She was standing on the porch, watching Mom." The wooden house on the tea hill suddenly felt eerily cold, the wind whistling through the cracks like a whisper. Lan was lying in her room, yet T insisted firmly that he had seen her standing outside. Hung comforted his son, but inside he felt a vague, unsettling unease. Outside, the countryside night was pitch black, with only the tea bushes swaying, their shadows faintly resembling silent figures watching from afar. After T's strange dream, the days in the wooden house on the tea hill grew heavier. Hung was busy with the harvest, leaving early and returning late. too exhausted to do more than collapse into sleep. Mai often stayed home with Lan, but the air between them was like smoldering embers, ready to burst into flames at the slightest touch. One afternoon, while Lan bent over arranging tea leaves to dry in the yard, Mai stood absent-mindedly leaning against the doorway. She recalled Fong's gaze from the day at the market, sweet, urging. Amid her monotonous days, Fong felt like a door opening to another world, one where she could be herself, free from scolding and the burden of a life of toil. That night, after Lan had gone to bed, Mai pretended to lull T to sleep and then quietly slipped out to the garden. Fong was already waiting under the longan tree, his tall, lean figure barely visible in the moonlight. "You came," Fong whispered with a smile. Mai nodded slightly, her heart pounding. They sat close together, voices hushed like the breeze. Fong spoke of tea merchants in the big city, of chances to change their fate if only they dared. Mai listened, entranced, imagining a life far from this worn-out place. "You don't deserve to live like this," Fong murmured close to her ear. "If you just dare, we can leave." His words sliced into Mai's mind like a blade. All the bitterness toward her mother-in-law, all the loneliness of her marriage, swelled into a vague but burning desire to escape. But just then, a faint sound rose from the tea hill. Both startled, they turned sharply. The darkness was thick, broken only by the rustle of leaves. Mai trembled. "Is someone watching us?" Fong tried to reassure her, but his eyes also darted nervously around. A cold wind blew through, making them part in a hurry. The next day, Lan looked at Mai with an unusual gaze. During the family meal, she suddenly spoke up. "You go to the market quite often, don't you? Always in the late afternoon." Mai stiffened, her chopsticks frozen midair. I just go to buy food, Mother." Lan's voice sharpened. "Going to the market is one thing, but sneaking around like a thief, what is there to hide?" Hung looked puzzled, not yet understanding. Mai forced a weak smile, denying vaguely, but Lan's aged eyes bored into her, making her breathless. That night, Mai tossed and turned, unable to sleep. She knew Lan was suspicious, and that was dangerous. That woman was not one to let things slide. In the darkness, a chilling thought flickered. If she were gone, everything would be so much easier. A few days later, Fong came again. The two met at the foot of the tea hill, where few people passed. Fong grasped Mai's hand tightly, his voice low. "You can't live like this forever. If you don't escape, your whole life will be nothing but a shadow in that house." Mai trembled. "But, my mother-in-law, she already knows." Fong stayed silent for a moment, then spoke with venom, like a snake. "Then there's only one way. If she's gone, you'll be free." Mai froze. His words lodged deep in her heart, like a dark spell she couldn't shake. That evening, when Hung returned from work, Lan was busy in the kitchen. He cheerfully shared that he had harvested a lot of young tea that day and the traders would surely pay a good price. Lan smiled, her aged eyes glimmering with faith. But when she looked over at Mai, sitting quietly in the corner of the kitchen, her gaze turned wary again. After dinner, she called Hung aside. "Son, has Mai seemed strange to you lately?" Hung was taken aback. "Strange? What do you mean, Mother? I've noticed she often goes out, and when she comes back, her eyes sparkle. Her manner is secretive. I fear she's hiding something." Hung waved his hand dismissively. "Mother, you're being suspicious again. Mai is just upset because we don't pay her enough attention. I'll take better care of her." Lan stayed silent, but her eyes remained heavy with worry. Deep down, she sensed something ominous was approaching. That night, as the whole family drifted into sleep, the sound of rustling came again from the garden. Mai lay in the bedroom, quietly watching Hung sleeping soundly beside her. She gently slid open the window and saw a shadowy figure waiting at the foot of the hill. Her heart pounded wildly. The darkness over the tea hill seemed thicker than ever, swallowing the house whole. The tea leaves shivered as if whispering secrets no one could hear. Mai clenched her fists, and for the first time in her life, a terrifying plan began to take shape in her mind. The next morning, dawn broke over the tea hill, with dewdrops still clinging to the leaves like silver. Yet the usually peaceful atmosphere carried an unsettling air. Lan was nowhere to be seen in the yard or in the kitchen as usual. Hung walked into the garden calling for his mother, then searched each room, his chest tightening. "Mother, where are you?" he called out anxiously. Little T hesitated. I didn't see Grandma." The old servant shook her head, muttering, "Madame Lan has never gone out without telling anyone before." The whole family turned the house upside down, but there was no trace of Lan. The kitchen door was still shut, the gate left slightly ajar, yet no figure appeared. A chilling feeling spread through the wooden house. Mai stood by, feigning panic, but deep inside, another fear began to drown her. The fear that what she and Fong had been imagining might actually be coming true. The villagers quickly learned of the incident. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some worried for Lan's safety. Others whispered strange suspicions. She must have gone to visit relatives somewhere. One neighbor shook their head, though their voice lacked conviction. "Go where without telling anyone? Not even the children saw her?" Another countered. Neighbors gathered, gossiping, glancing around the house and the tea hill. Their scrutinizing eyes turned toward Mai, making her shiver slightly. Everyone noticed her uneasy gaze, her awkward, forced smile. Hung tried to reassure them. Maybe she just went out for a while and will come back. Let's not worry too soon. But deep inside, Hung couldn't shake the unease. Lan was strict, but she was never the kind of person to leave home without telling anyone. By afternoon, a few villagers went into the tea fields to search. They called her name, their voices echoing, but only the rustling of leaves answered. The last rays of sunlight stretched long shadows across the rows of tea, forming eerie shapes on the ground that made many shiver. Little T clung to Hung, his voice small. "Daddy, I saw Grandma under the tea tree, but why didn't she say anything?" Hung froze, staring in the direction the boy pointed. Beneath the branches, there was only darkness, tea leaves swaying in the wind, forming strange silhouettes. He tried to stay calm, promising his son they would find her. But in his heart, a creeping fear whispered, what if something terrible really happened? That night, the house grew stifling. Mai lay in the room, staring out the window where moonlight cast twisted shapes on the tea leaves. Dewdrops glittered on the leaves like drops of red blood. She trembled, her heartbeat racing. In her mind, she saw Lan standing beneath the tea tree, those aged eyes fixed on her, silent, accusing. Then Fong emerged from the shadows, his voice a whisper. "We must act quickly." Mai nodded, torn between fear and resolve. For the first time, she fully allowed a dark thought to take control. Lan's shadow, though wordless, haunted her still. Inside the wooden house on the tea hill, the space seemed to shrink, and ordinary sounds, the wind, the rustling leaves, suddenly turned chilling. Exhausted from a whole day of searching, Hung finally fell asleep. Little T whimpered softly, while Mai sat silently, her eyes locked on the darkness beyond the window. In the stillness of the night, faint murmurs slipped through the cracks of the house, making everything inside feel alive. Mai sensed something waiting, not just ordinary fear, but the weight of a decision already made. From this moment on, nothing would ever be the same. The wooden house on the tea hill remained still after Lan's disappearance. Yet the air had changed, heavy and suffocating. Every gust of wind through the cracks carried strange sounds, like invisible whispers, making Mai flinch again and again. Little T grew quieter, often sitting by the window at dusk. One evening, he turned to Hung, his voice trembling. "Daddy, I saw Grandma, standing under the tea tree, smiling at Mom." Hung startled, his chest tightening. He pulled his son close and gently reassured him. "You were just dreaming, son. Grandma isn't there." But T shook his head, his wide eyes filled with fear. "It wasn't a dream, I really saw her." Hearing this, Mai's heart pounded violently. In her mind, Lan's stern, aged eyes resurfaced, now etched into the image of her shadow standing beneath the tea tree. A chill ran down Mai's spine. In the days that followed, strange occurrences began to unfold. Whispers in the night, each time darkness fell. Faint murmurs echoed through the house, sometimes soft whispers, sometimes low groans. that kept Mai awake. Whenever she opened the window, there were only the tea leaves swaying in the wind. Never a person in sight. A figure gliding across the tea hill. More than once, Mai glimpsed a shadow moving swiftly among the rows of tea, flickering in and out of view. But when she rushed outside to look closer, there was nothing left but the wind and the rustling leaves. Red stains on tea leaves inside the house. One day, Mai noticed small red droplets on freshly picked tea leaves in the yard. Looking closely, they resembled blood. She quickly wiped them away. But hours later, they reappeared. The sight made her panic. Her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Hung, buried in work, remained oblivious to Mai's growing tension. She tried to hide her fear. But inside, her anxiety swelled with each passing day. Even Fong's secret messages now filled her with dread, of him. And of herself. One night, she heard soft footsteps circling the house. Rushing out, she found little T pointing at the window. "Mom, look, Grandma, she's smiling at you." Mai blinked, her chest tightening as her heartbeat thundered. The air grew icy, the thick black sky pressing down with an invisible terror. Moonlight cast twisted, distorted shapes of the tea rose across the window. Mai grew exhausted, sleepless, her eyes sunken. At times, she tried to convince herself, it must be my imagination, just the darkness playing tricks on me. But deep inside, she knew what she saw was no illusion. Fong asked her to meet again on the tea hill. When they met, Mai trembled. "Fong, is it true? Is she really watching us?" Fong gave a faint smile, but his eyes betrayed fear. "No, it's just the wind, the moonlight. Don't be afraid." But Mai didn't believe him. The visions of Lan's shadow beneath the tea tree, her aged eyes smiling at her, and the nightly whispers haunted Mai so deeply she could neither eat nor sleep in peace. One evening, as Mai prepared to wash tea leaves in the kitchen, she suddenly noticed small red droplets on the table, on the tea leaves, and across the floor. Drawing a deep breath, she realized there was no doubt anymore. Something supernatural was present. Or perhaps her sins were taking terrifying shape before her eyes. Little T looked at his mother, his voice soft like a plea. "Mom, Grandma is sad. She wants you to know." Mai stayed silent, her heart full of fear and regret. But she didn't yet realize that this fear was only the beginning of the true nightmare. The atmosphere around the wooden house on the tea hill grew so heavy that even Hung began to sense it. The whispers, the fleeting shadows, the red stains on the tea leaves, all of it merged into a foreboding presence that threatened every member of the family. Mai, in the darkened room, held T tightly in her arms, her eyes fixed on the window. Outside, the swaying tea leaves seemed determined to drown her, as if Lan was still silently watching from somewhere close. A shiver ran down her spine. For the first time, she felt that every action she and Fong had taken was being judged by a force invisible to human eyes. Night fell. The wooden house on the tea hill lay in a dreadful stillness. Mai sat in her room, eyes wide open, staring out the window. The darkness was no longer ordinary. Every tea leaf that stirred in the wind appeared like twisted figures, like pairs of gleaming eyes fixed on her. Little T stood beside her, his round eyes wide, his small voice trembling. "Mom, Grandma is standing by the window, looking at you." Mai clutched her son's hand, overcome with a fear too great to name. Sweat beaded on her forehead, her heart racing wildly. Her eyes swept across the empty room, but in her mind, Lan's aged face, her piercing eyes, remained vivid under the tea tree outside. Are you sure?" Mai asked, her voice quivering. "Yes, I saw her clearly, she was standing there." But she didn't say anything, just smiled. T whispered, his lips trembling. A chill ran down Mai's spine. She knew she could no longer avoid it. Her secret meetings with Fong suddenly felt like a crushing burden, and that invisible fear seemed to drag her deeper into the pit of guilt and regret. The strange phenomena didn't stop inside the room, they spread everywhere. Whispers from every corner. Mai heard faint rustling in the kitchen, heavy breathing in the hallway, and footsteps that flickered in and out across the floor. She crept to check, but no one was there, only darkness and the damp scent of earth. A shadow under the moonlight. Under the pale moon, the swaying tea bushes formed shapes like people. Mai saw Lan's shadow standing beneath a tree, her silver hair glistening, her stern eyes laced with sorrow. The return of red stains. Mai found small drops, red like blood, on freshly picked tea leaves. On the kitchen table, even on the floor. She tried to wipe them away, but they always returned, shattering her composure completely. Mai grew sleepless, exhausted, her eyes hollow. At times, she told herself, "It's only my imagination, just the darkness playing tricks." But deep down, she knew what she saw was real. Each time Lan's figure appeared, her chest tightened, the weight of fear and guilt pressing hard. Fong appeared again one night, whispering, "Don't be afraid, there's nothing there." But Mai didn't believe him. She knew Lan's shadow wasn't just imagination. It was a warning, an omen, that her restless spirit was watching every move. Another night, as Mai was about to wash tea leaves in the kitchen, she saw Tea standing frozen, pointing toward a corner. "Mom, look, Grandma, she's standing there, and crying." Moonlight spilled through the window, shaping a faint silhouette that drifted like mist, yet clear enough for Mai to recognize Lan's silver hair, her stern but sorrowful face. Mai froze, her hands shaking, her heart hammering wildly. For the first time, she truly felt she was being watched. She tried to steady herself, but terror kept her from breathing evenly. Everything around her seemed alive, the rustling leaves, the shadows of trees cast on the floor. Even the smell of damp soil mixed with fresh-picked tea turned suffocating. For the first time, Mai realized that no matter how carefully she and Fong tried to hide, their actions were being judged. An inescapable, suffocating weight enveloped her, pushing her to the edge of collapse. Little T clung to his mother, his voice trembling. "Mom, Grandma is sad. She wants you to understand." Mai looked at her son, her eyes brimming with tears, her heart flooding with unbearable regret. She realized that this fear wasn't only born of shadows or strange phenomena. It was also a warning from her own conscience, from the dark deeds waiting to be exposed. That night, the wooden house on the tea hill grew heavier than ever. Moonlight cast long, twisted shadows across the rows of tea, as if trying to drown everything in darkness. Mai held Tea close, staring out the window, sensing clearly that every wrong choice would soon lead to a nightmare with no escape. In the days following the strange events, the wooden house seemed buried in an atmosphere of gloom and tension. Mai nearly stopped sleeping altogether. She constantly heard faint whispers echoing through the house, footsteps flickering across the floor, and the lingering vision of Lan's figure under the tea tree haunting her thoughts. One afternoon, Mai sat in the kitchen, her hands trembling as she held a cup of tea, her eyes fixed on the window. Suddenly, she saw Fong's shadow appear at the fence, his demeanor heavy, nothing like his usual confident self. He stepped closer, his voice low. Are you all right?" Mai didn't answer. She shook, stammering, No, I'm not. I saw her, in the garden." Fong frowned, stepping nearer, but his eyes betrayed worry. For the first time, Mai noticed his confidence was gone. He lowered his head, speaking softly. We've already gone too far." Mai's heart clenched, fear mixed with guilt, leaving her trembling, her hands gripping the edge of the table. She understood now. The ghost wasn't just imagination. It was a warning from some invisible force, or perhaps her own conscience staring back at her. That night, the manifestations grew stronger. Once again, T whispered, "Mom, Grandma is standing on the porch, looking at you. She's smiling, but her eyes are sad." Mai wrapped her arms around him as a chill spread through her body. Small red drops reappeared, on tea leaves, on the kitchen table, even smeared across the floor. The scent of damp earth mixed with freshly picked tea leaves formed a strange, unsettling odor. Mai panicked, too drained to hide her fear any longer. She trembled, gasping for breath, sobbing as she muttered, Please don't hurt me." Fong stood beside her in silence, but his eyes revealed his own terror. He knew things had spiraled far beyond control. Together, they stood in the dim kitchen, surrounded by the tea fields shrouded in mist, feeling constantly watched. The next day, news of Lan's mysterious disappearance spread throughout the village. Neighbors crowded in to ask questions. Gossip swirling. Everyone could sense that something was deeply wrong in the wooden house on the tea hill. "I heard Mai often cries out at night," one neighbor whispered. "They say people have seen Lan's shadow walking around the garden, but no one knows if it's real or not." A young man replied. The rumors only made Mai and Fong more uneasy. They both knew that if the villagers discovered anything unusual, the truth could no longer be hidden. That night, Mai was once again dragged into a true nightmare. Whispers echoed through the house. Lan's shadow flickered in the moonlight, and red drops on the tea leaves gleamed faintly, like eyeballs staring at her. Little T trembled, clutching his mother. "Mom, Grandma is sad. She wants you to understand." Mai broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, her heart filled with regret. She realized that her secret affairs, her lies, and her greed had pushed her to a point of no return. Fong stepped forward, trying to comfort her, but even he couldn't hide his fear. His eyes darted toward the window, where the darkness and misty tea rose made him imagine Lan's figure silently watching. Amid the suffocating atmosphere, a stranger appeared at the edge of the village. Nam, Hung's friend from high school, had come to visit and immediately noticed the strange tension. He caught the villagers' suspicious glances, heard the gossip about Mai and Fong, and the eerie happenings. A strong instinct urged him to uncover the truth. Nam observed carefully, noticing details others overlooked. The flicker of fear in Mai's eyes when hearing the rumors, Fong's unusual signs of nervousness, and T's insistence that Grandma appeared. All of it convinced Nam that something dark was unfolding in the wooden house on the tea hill. Late at night, the house seemed quiet, but nothing felt normal anymore. The rustling leaves, the red stains on tea leaves, the moonlit shadows, all merged into a suffocating veil. Mai lay in her room, holding tea, staring out the window, the weight of guilt and fear pressing down. Fong stood outside in the hallway, his gaze fixed on the darkness. And for the first time, he too was afraid. Everything felt ready to explode. One wrong step, one more dark decision, could drag them all into an abyss with no escape. From that moment, the wooden house on the tea hill became a place shrouded in dark secrets, restless spirits, and sins destined to be revealed. Nam entered the tea hill village at dusk, the golden sunlight filtering through the lush green rows of tea, casting hazy beams of light. Though the scenery looked peaceful, Nam felt something deeply unsettling. He knew his old friend Hung was living in the wooden house, but the atmosphere here was far different from before. First, Nam sought out Hung, asking about his family. Hung briefly recounted Lan's mysterious disappearance, the nightly whispers, the fleeting shadows, and the strange red drops on the tea leaves. Nam listened closely, his eyes narrowing. Every detail matched the instinct he had felt all along. "This doesn't sound simple," Nam murmured. "I want to go to Mai's house and see for myself." Hung hesitated. I don't know if she would mind." "Don't worry, I'm only observing," Nam replied. "I just need to verify a few things, and the truth will come out." By dusk, Nam quietly stood near the tea field, about a few dozen meters from the wooden house. Moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting fleeting shadows. He observed carefully, watching every move Mai and Fong made. Not long after, he saw Mai slip out into the back garden. Meeting Fong, they moved cautiously, hiding among the trees, speaking in hushed tones. Nam narrowed his eyes, noticing Mai's nervous gestures, the flicker of fear in her eyes whenever she glanced toward the window. Clear signs of a heavy secret being concealed. Fong leaned close, whispering something into Mai's ear. Nam couldn't hear the words, but the look on Mai's pale face, her trembling body, told him enough. Their relationship was not just an affair. Something far more serious was at play. That night, Nam decided to observe from closer to the house. From his hiding place, he witnessed the strange events Hung had described were real. Shadows flickering beneath the tea trees, moving with purpose, whispers rising from the kitchen. Yet when he crept closer, No one was there. Red stains appearing on freshly picked tea leaves, then vanishing mysteriously. These details convinced Nam even more that Lan's disappearance was no simple matter. Part of him shivered at the eerie phenomena, but his investigative instinct drove him to uncover the truth. The next day, Nam spoke with several villagers, asking about Mai, Fong, and Lan's disappearance. They repeated what they had seen: figures moving on the tea hill, whispers at night, and the strange red stains. Some even mentioned how little tea had said. Grandma stood under the tea tree, smiling at Mom. Nam was shaken. Every detail matched what he had witnessed himself. He knew that if he continued observing, the secrets would eventually be exposed. But he also understood the danger. Mai and Fong were clearly hiding something far darker than anyone imagined. That evening, Nam chose to move in even closer. Pretending to stroll through the tea fields, he studied every corner, preparing himself to record evidence if the chance arose. Moonlight cast long, warped shadows across the rows of tea, making the scene both beautiful and haunting. Inside the house, Mai remained frantic, clutching tea in her arms. She looked out the window and saw Fong's shadow lurking in the yard, fear rising in her chest. Deep down, she knew, if their secret was revealed, everything would collapse into tragedy. From a dark corner of the garden, Nam observed every detail, every gesture, every glance. He understood that the first step to exposing the truth was to document Mai and Fong's suspicious behavior. And he was determined that their secret would not remain hidden any longer. The wooden house on the tea hill, caught between moonlight and shadow, felt like a curtain of secrets on the verge of being torn away. Restless spirits, buried crimes, and the weight of human mistakes all stood at the brink of revelation. As night fell, the tea hill sank into a thin veil of mist, with only the silver glow of the moon reflecting off the rows of leaves. Nam crept quietly around Mai's house, hiding behind the tea bushes, watching every move of Mai and Fong. He knew that one small slip, and all the secrets would be exposed. Mai stepped into the yard, her trembling hands clutching a basket of tea leaves, her eyes scanning the darkness around the house. From time to time, she stopped, inhaling deeply, trying to steady herself, but her face betrayed her fear and anxiety. Fong stood nearby, holding a flashlight, his eyes darting quickly across the garden, sometimes toward the house, sometimes toward the compost pit in the back, where Nam keenly noticed something unusual. Narrowing his eyes, Nam observed carefully. Fresh patches of damp soil disturbed around the compost pit, though the day had been completely dry. Newly picked tea leaves speckled with red droplets, not falling naturally, but seemingly placed there deliberately. The pit's wooden hatch left slightly ajar, just wide enough for someone to slip through, yet showing no signs of regular use. All these details convinced Nam that something horrific was hidden there. Meanwhile, Mai and Fong whispered, their voices low enough for only each other to hear. "I can't take this anymore," Mai murmured, her voice shaking. "She's there all the time, appearing everywhere, never letting me rest." Fong lowered his head in silence, his anxious eyes giving him away. He realized Mai's terror was beginning to consume him as well. The secret schemes, the whispered promises, they had all become a crushing burden. Nam pulled out his phone, quietly recording the whispers, the footsteps, and even Mai's trembling voice if he could capture it. He knew evidence couldn't be ignored. With enough details recorded, the truth would eventually be exposed. Little T stood near the window, pointing into the dark garden, his voice quivering. "Mom, Grandma is outside, looking at you, but her eyes are sad." Mai turned to her son, regret welling in her chest. She realized her actions endangered not just herself, but her child as well. Yet the fear was too great for her to stop. Fong gently placed a hand on Mai's shoulder, his own voice trembling. "We have to keep the secret, no one must ever know." Mai nodded, tears streaming down her face. Her heart felt crushed, fear, guilt, and despair intertwining. The nightmare of Lan's shadow, the whispers, the drops of blood on the tea leaves, all blurred together. Clouding her mind, Nam kept observing. He noticed the two circling near the compost pit, their eyes darting constantly, their movements cautious, as though hiding something. He memorized every detail, the pit's location, Mai and Fong's gestures, their tense expressions, and the strange state of the tea leaves. He knew the next step would come when they lost control. When humans reached the limit of fear and stress, they always made mistakes, and Nam was ready to seize that moment. Late at night, the wooden house lay in darkness, only silver moonlight spilling through the windows. The air was so heavy that little T trembled endlessly. Clinging to his mother, Mai sat collapsed on the floor, clutching her head, weeping. Fong stood nearby, his eyes scanning the house, his heartbeat loud and frantic. From his shadowed vantage point, Nam remained silent. He knew just one more incident would push Mai over the edge. Confessions would slip out, and the truth of Lan's disappearance would finally surface. The strange phenomena, the shadows, the whispers, the red stains, seemed to be driving Mai and Fong to the brink. The invisible nightmare not only pushed them into panic but also created the perfect opening for Nam to expose their secrets. The wooden house on the tea hill, under moonlight, became an invisible trap, holding dark secrets and sins that could no longer stay hidden. Nam watched patiently, waiting for the decisive moment. That night, the house sank into a dreadful silence. Ordinary sounds now turned sinister, the rustling leaves, the wind brushing past the windows, and the steady drip of water from the eaves. Mai clutched tea in their room, her panic unbearable. She saw Lan's shadow flickering beneath the tea tree, those aged, stern, sorrowful eyes tracking her every move. "Mom, Grandma is sad. She wants you to understand," T whispered, trembling. Mai felt her chest tighten, her hands and feet ice cold. She told herself, I must stop. I had to do something." Yet her secret entanglement with Fong had already dragged her into a whirlpool of guilt with no escape. Fong stood near the door, his eyes flicking toward the garden. He too could feel the crushing weight of an invisible force. His voice quivered. "Mai, don't panic. Everything will be all right." But his heart pounded, sweat streaming down his forehead. Mai's terror infected him, leaving them both like two lost souls, spiraling out of control inside a dark house, surrounded by the misty rows of tea. From the shadows, Nam watched everything. He knew this was the decisive moment. If Mai lost control, she would reveal all the secrets herself. He readied his recorder, hidden among the trees, waiting for the perfect instant. A gust of wind swept through, making the tea leaves sway, their warped shadows twisting into human-like shapes. Mai trembled as she stared out the window, the whispers sounding louder than ever. She could barely breathe. "Fong, I can't take this anymore." Mai sobbed. She appears all the time. I'm scared. I'm so scared." Fong lowered his head, speechless, only gripping Mai's hand tighter. He too felt that their secret meetings, their dark plans, had spiraled far out of control. Little T stood nearby, pointing toward the dark porch. "Mom, Grandma is standing there, her eyes are sad. She wants you to tell the truth." Mai drew a deep breath, her whole body trembling, tears streaming down her face. She realized the fear didn't just come from supernatural visions, but from her conscience reflecting every sin she had committed. She nearly collapsed onto the floor. Nam saw the opening. He stepped forward slowly, his voice gentle yet firm. "Mai, you need to speak the truth." Mai flinched, turning toward the unfamiliar figure. But Nam's eyes were not threatening, they were steady, like a guide in the darkness. She sensed that if she didn't speak now, everything would spiral beyond repair. Fong looked at Nam and understood the gravity of the situation. He knew they had been discovered, and there was no longer any way to hide. In the tense silence, Mai broke down, her voice trembling through sobs. "Fong, we shouldn't have, but it's already happened. Everything has happened." Nam listened carefully, his recorder capturing every word of Mai's trembling confession. The red drops on the tea leaves, the whispers in the garden, Lan's flickering shadow beneath the moonlight, all became threads of evidence, binding the truth together. That night, the wooden house on the tea hill became a place of reckoning. Mai, Fong, and little T, 3 lives entangled in guilt, fear, and the restless spirit, stood at the brink of exposure. Nam, patient and perceptive, was ready to drag the truth into the light. Moonlight poured across the rows of tea, casting long, twisted shadows, as though bearing witness to everything. And in that darkness, every black secret of Mai and Fong was about to be revealed. Late into the night, the wooden house sank into silence, only silver beams filtering through the tea rows. Mai sat collapsed on the floor, clutching tea tightly, her heartbeat racing, sweat soaking her forehead, her tear-filled eyes burning red. She knew everything had slipped beyond her control, and the truth would soon be laid bare. Nam stood close, the recorder running. He did not threaten her, he only met her gaze, steady and compassionate. "Mai, you need to tell everything." Mai gasped for breath, her whole body trembling. She lowered her head, her voice quivering. "Fong, I can't bear it anymore. Everything has already happened." Fong stood beside her, his hand clutching hers tightly, his eyes filled with both fear and regret. For the first time, he realized their secret affair and dark schemes had dragged them both into a whirlpool with no escape. Mai began to speak, her words broken and shaky. We met in secret, Lan, she suspected, and we. Mai hesitated, tears streaming down her face. We made her. Little T stood nearby, his eyes wide, silently listening to his mother's confession. Moonlight spilled across the rows of tea, and Lan's shadow seemed to flicker there, her aged eyes stern yet tinged with sorrow. Nam stood still, but remained composed. He let Mai continue, recording every trembling word. This was the undeniable proof of the truth that had been hidden for so long. Fong bowed his head, his voice choking. I'm sorry, everything can't be hidden anymore." The next day, Nam brought the recordings and all the evidence to the police. The strange signs around the house, the red-stained tea leaves, and the confessions of Mai and Fong became the basis for a full investigation. A police team arrived at the wooden house on the tea hill. Searching every corner, they discovered the compost pit behind the house, where Mai and Fong had hidden Lan's body. The stench, the traces of fertilizer, and the bloodstains all confirmed that the confessions were true. Mai and Fong were arrested on the spot, their faces pale, eyes wide with terror, hands trembling uncontrollably. Little T cried bitterly as Hung held him tightly, his heart aching, yet knowing that justice had finally been served. The villagers of Tea Hill gathered around, watching as Mai and Fong were led away. Shock and outrage mingled with grief for Lan's tragic loss. The stories of her shadow, the whispers, and her fleeting image in the garden were now understood. They had been warnings, signs from her restless spirit, reminding her descendants of the terrible price of their sins. Nam stood silently, his eyes fixed on the wooden house atop the tea hill. In the corner of his vision, he thought he saw Lan's shadow appear one last time, smiling faintly, as if in gratitude. The old woman, though gone, had finally found peace. The wooden house returned to its stillness, the lush tea rose shimmering beneath the morning sun. Little T was now raised by Hung, but the memories of those terrifying nights and Lan's loss continued to haunt the boy. The villagers carried on with daily life, yet the story of greed, crime, and a spirit's vengeance would be retold for many years to come. Mai and Fong were punished by law, and from then on, no one ever saw Lan's ghost again. Her restless soul had been laid to rest, but the pain and the haunting memories of those days lingered in everyone's hearts. The next morning, the Tea Hill glowed under gentle sunlight, but in the village of Tea Hill, the atmosphere remained heavy. The mystery of Lan's disappearance, the strange phenomena, and the confessions of Mai and Fong still stirred whispers among the people. Hung held little T in his arms, his heart aching with grief and burdened by responsibility. The boy still trembled from those horrific nights. Hung spoke softly. "You'll be all right, son. Daddy will always be here with you." T looked up, his round eyes still clouded with fear. "Daddy, is Grandma sad?" Hung fell silent, swallowing back tears. He knew that although Land's spirit had been given justice and rest, the memories of those haunting nights would follow T for a long time. Gradually, the villagers resumed their routines. Some worked the T hills, while others retold the story as a lesson of greed, sin, and the warnings of the dead. A few elders muttered, "Thank goodness the truth came out, otherwise, Land's spirit would have haunted us forever." Their eyes, when glancing up at the T hill, still flickered with unease. They could almost sense fleeting figures in the mist, or hear faint whispers carried by the wind through the tea leaves. One afternoon, Hung took T into the tea garden. The boy walked slowly, his eyes fixed on the endless rows of green. Then he turned to his father, his voice trembling. "Daddy, I think I saw Grandma, somewhere." Hung hugged him tightly, whispering gently, "No, son, it's only your imagination. Grandma has already found her rest." Though his words were meant to comfort, a lingering chill still crept into the air. T glanced around, his eyes often pausing on the faint outline of a tea bush, as if expecting to see the same shadow that had haunted his nightmares. Mai and Fong had been taken away, yet the echoes of the case remained etched in the villagers' hearts. The wooden house on the tea hill now stood silent, but when night fell, faint whispers sometimes stirred, reminders that what had happened would never be completely forgotten. Nam left the village, but the memories haunted him still. He recalled Land's final appearance, her smile of gratitude before fading away. Justice had been served, yet the visions of shadows, the whispers, and the red stains on tea leaves lingered in his mind. A year later, the tea hill flourished once more, its rows of leaves lush and green, and the villagers resumed their ordinary lives. Little T had grown, yet from time to time, he still glanced toward the old tea tree, speaking of his grandmother in his dreams. Hung watched over his son closely, always reminding him, "Grandma has found peace. You don't need to be afraid anymore." The stories of ghosts, restless spirits, and terrifying nights had become memories. Yet whenever the wind rustled through the tea leaves, the sound carried a reminder that every crime, every act of greed, leaves a trace, and conscience never fades away. The wooden house on the tea hill still stood, but it had become a symbol, a warning about greed, the vengeance of spirits, and the power of truth revealed. And though time passed, the memories clung on, so that anyone who walked by the tea hill would whisper to themselves, "Never forget what happened here." A year later, the tea hill was still lush, the wind sweeping through the rows, carrying its soft, rustling song. The villagers of Tea Hill carried on with life, yet the shadow of the crime remained etched deep in their minds. Each afternoon, Hung led little T into the garden. The boy, now livelier and older, sometimes still glanced toward the old tree, mentioning his grandmother in his dreams. Hung looked at him, torn between sorrow and comfort, and whispered, "Grandma has found peace. You don't need to fear anymore." T nodded, but his eyes still lingered now and then on the faint shadows moving across the tea hill. The memories of chilling nights, whispered voices, and Land's shadowy figure remained quietly alive in the boy's heart. The wooden house, where Mai and Fong once hid their sins, now stood in silence, yet whenever night fell, villagers still heard the faint rustle of tea leaves, like echoes of memory, a reminder that every secret leaves its trace. Everyone whispered to themselves, "What happened on the tea hill will never be forgotten." Nam, the man who helped uncover the truth, sometimes looked back at the village from afar. He remembered Land's eyes the last time she appeared, her smile of gratitude, though the case was closed by law. In his mind, the shadows, the whispers, and the drops of blood on the tea leaves continued to haunt him. The villagers returned to their work on the tea hill, but in their stories, they retold the crime as a warning. Parents told their children, "Never be greedy. Never sneak to do wrong, because someone will always be watching and reminding you." Hung looked at T, his heart heavy. He knew his son would grow up with memories of those terrifying nights. But he believed that with the presence of family and justice served, the boy would gradually overcome his fear. One afternoon, T gazed out at the tea hill and asked his father, "Daddy, was Grandma really walking here before?" Hung smiled gently and replied, "She only wanted to remind us about right and wrong." The rustling sounds in the tea fields still echoed, but now they were only memories, no longer threats. The evening sunlight streamed through the tea leaves, casting long shadows, no longer ghostly, only lingering traces of the past, carrying lessons of crime, greed, and the vengeance of a restless spirit. The story closed, yet the memories remained deep in the villagers' minds. Mai and Fong had paid the price for their sins. Lan's spirit had finally found rest. Little T and Hung learned to live with their memories, no longer haunted by ghosts. The villagers understood that every wrong leaves a mark, and conscience never quiets. The tea hill stayed lush and green. The wind still whispered through the leaves like recollection. But from then on, everyone who lived there knew that light and justice always rise above darkness, even as the memory of crime and spirits lingered, softly reminding people of morality and conscience. And in the twilight, when the long shadows of the tea leaves stretched across the ground, Lan's image still seemed to watch from afar, smiling faintly, signaling that her final rest had truly come. A year passed since Mai and Fong were taken away. The tea hill remained verdant, the morning sun lighting each row of leaves. But within the hearts of tea hill villagers, the memory lingered. From time to time, they recalled Lan, the terrifying nights, and her stern yet sorrowful eyes in the darkness. Each evening, Hung led little T into the garden. The boy, now older and steadier on his feet, still sometimes paused at the old tea tree, the place where Lan's shadow once appeared. "Daddy, is Grandma still here?" T asked, his voice trembling with both fear and curiosity. Hung smiled softly, holding his son close. "She's at peace now, my boy, what you see are only memories." Though his father's words were meant to soothe, T still felt the lingering chill carried in every breeze through the tea leaves. The rustling like echoes of the past. The wooden house, where Mai and Fong once hid their crime, now stood abandoned, scarred with traces of those terrifying nights. When darkness fell, villagers sometimes heard faint murmurs, reminders that even exposed secrets leave shadows in the mind. Nam, the one who had brought the truth to light, occasionally returned to the village. From a distance, he gazed at the wooden house, his expression solemn, though justice had been served. Lan's smile, her fleeting shadow, and the strange sounds of that place still haunted him. He knew the past could never be erased, only endured as memory. The villagers resumed daily life, yet the lessons of greed, sin, and the vengeance of spirits lived on in their stories and eyes. Parents repeated to their children, "Never sneak to do wrong, or someone will always be watching and reminding you." The rows of green tea glistened beneath the sun, the wind rustling them with sounds that recalled dreadful nights. But now, they were only echoes, no longer a direct threat. One afternoon, T stood gazing at the tea hill and asked, "Daddy, should I still be afraid?" Hung hugged him tightly, answering gently, "No, son, it's all over. Grandma is at peace, and we must keep living." Yet the memories lingered. Sometimes, T's eyes would drift back to the old tea tree, the place where Lan's shadow once stood in those chilling nights, his gaze still tinged with unease. Hung knew memories never vanish completely, but people learned to live with them. Elsewhere in the village, neighbors gathered to talk about the past year. Relief mingled with unease. They were glad justice had prevailed, but they never forgot Lan's warnings. Looking up at the tea hill, their eyes held a trace of fear, a reminder that though light and justice rise above darkness, memories endure. The wooden house had become a symbol of greed, sin, and a spirit's vengeance. The rustling leaves, the stretching shadows at dusk, whispered reminders that every wrongful act leaves traces, and conscience is never silent. From afar, Nam watched as Hung and T walked among the rows of tea, his eyes solemn yet eased. Lan had found her rest. The truth had been uncovered. Though memories haunted, justice, conscience, and moral lessons had triumphed. And in the twilight, as the tea leaves cast long shadows across the ground, Lan's image seemed to watch from afar, smiling gently, a sign that peace had finally come. Even as her story remained a lesson about greed, crime, and conscience, One late afternoon, the tea hill glowed gold in the sunset. Hung walked with T among the green rows, the air peaceful yet faintly heavy. The boy stopped, pointing toward the old tea tree. "Daddy, I still see Grandma there." Hung gently held his son's hand and whispered, "Look closely, son, it's only leaves and light. Grandma has found peace." But deep in T's mind, the visions remained. Lan's figure in the garden, her aged eyes stern yet sorrowful. The blood-stained leaves, the whispers in the wind. He knew memories never truly fade, even when justice has been done. The wooden house, once a hiding place for Mai and Fong's sins, now stood empty. But its echoes endured. At night, villagers still swore they heard rustling leaves or faint murmurs, like the past refusing to vanish. A few elders muttered, "Yes, every sin leaves its trace, it never disappears." Nam, after exposing the truth, sometimes returned. From afar, he gazed at the tea hill, recalling Lan's final look. Though justice had prevailed, the nightmares, the shadows, and the rustling still haunted him. Little T grew under Hung's devoted care. Yet sometimes he dreamed of Lan's spirit in the tea garden, her stern, sorrowful eyes watching. He would tell his father, "Daddy, I saw Grandma looking at me." Her eyes were sad. Hung embraced him tightly, his voice soft. "That was only a dream. Son, Grandma has already found her peace." Even so, the memories of those terrifying nights lingered. T slowly learned to accept them, not as threats, but as lessons about morality, guilt, and conscience that would remain forever. The villagers gradually returned to their ordinary lives. Some would still recall the story of Lan, Mai, Fong, and the nights of horror. But now it was only a tale, a warning. No one can escape their conscience. Secrets always leave traces. The rustling of tea leaves, the long shadows under the moonlight, all became soft recollections, tinged with unease, reminding everyone of the past and its moral lessons. From afar, Nam watched Hung and T walking together, his gaze solemn but relieved. Lan had finally found peace. The truth had been revealed. The village had learned its lesson about greed, sin, and the vengeance of a restless spirit. Yet light and justice were only part of it. The memories, the shadows, the whispers still lingered, reminding people that no matter how much time passed, what had happened could never be erased completely. The tea hill, the wooden house, the moonlight, and the rustling leaves, together they painted a scene both peaceful and haunting. The lessons of morality, sin, greed, and spiritual retribution remained, not as judgment, but as reminders to everyone who passed by. Night fell on the tea hill. The moon shone across the lush rows, casting long shadows. The air was still, but in the villagers' hearts remained echoes of dreadful times. Lan's figure, whispers in the wind, and the nightmares little T once endured. Hung held T close, watching his son grow stronger each day. The boy, though braver, still sometimes glanced at the old tea tree. The place of horrors passed. Gently, Hung whispered, "It's over now, son. Grandma has found peace." T nodded, though his eyes still showed a trace of worry. The visions of ghosts, the blood on tea leaves, the whispers at night, they lived on in his memory. He knew that while the danger had passed, the lessons of morality and conscience would endure. The wooden house, once Mai and Fong's place of secrecy, now stood abandoned. Yet sometimes, when night fell, villagers still swore they heard the rustling leaves and faint murmurs, not as hauntings, but as memories, reminders that every evil deed leaves its mark. Nam stood at a distance, watching Hung and T among the tea rows, his eyes quiet but at ease. He remembered Lan's final glance, her smile of gratitude. The truth had been laid bare, justice served, but the memories endured. The villagers gathered on the tea hill, retelling the case as a lesson. No one escapes conscience. Every dark secret leaves its trace. The rustling leaves, the long shadows beneath the moon, blended into a scene both calm and unsettling. Parents passed the tale to their children, teaching that morality and justice always remain, and that the vengeance of spirits may simply be a reminder rather than a threat. Little T slowly learned to accept his memories of those horrific nights. He knew that although light and justice had overcome the darkness, the lessons of greed, sin, and conscience would live on in people's hearts. Standing by his son, Hung gently reminded, "Grandma has found peace, but you must always remember, right and wrong live forever in the conscience." The tea hill remained green, the moonlight casting long shadows over the rows, the rustling leaves whispering of memory. But now, they no longer threatened. They only reminded of the past, of morality, of conscience. Time passed, and the villagers lived on. Yet they never forgot. Greed, sin, and secrecy always leave traces. Mai and Fong had paid their price. Lan had found rest, but the story lived in their minds. Nam left the village, his eyes solemn yet relieved. He knew the truth had been revealed, the spirit laid to rest, and the moral lesson carved deep into the hearts of the people. And in the twilight, as the tea leaves cast long shadows across the ground, Lan's faint figure seemed to linger, smiling softly, signaling her eternal rest, and the triumph of light over darkness. What happened on the tea hill would be told again and again. Not just as a ghost story, but as a moral warning, a tale of greed, sin, conscience, and the justice that will always prevail. The story ends here. Thank you for listening until the very end. If you enjoyed it, please give a like and subscribe. It's a great encouragement for us to create more haunting tales for you. If you have questions or notice any details to add, please leave a comment below. Thank you for watching, and Bong Toi Trong Dem will see you again in the next story.